We're going to be ranking rookie wide receivers from the 2024 NFL Draft class, but it's going to be with a twist. Every week we rank the wide receivers. We started off with 5, and every week we've been adding 3. We're going to add 3 more wide receivers to the list at random today for the rankings. We're going to talk ball on these prospects. We're going to put them into tiers for Dynasty Fantasy Football. You need to click that subscribe button right now because we're covering the NFL Draft and Dynasty Fantasy Football all offseason long, and we're going to get you set straight for your rookie drafts. But we're going to head over to the tier maker right now. We're going to start ranking these wide receivers. They're put in the tiers. We got a stud tier, A, B, C, D. We're going to talk ball on these wide receivers. We did this last week. We're adding 3 more to the mix here. I think you know who's going in the stud tier. I think you know where guys are going, but you don't know which wide receivers are going to get ranked because they are at random. And we're going to add more random wide receivers as the weeks go by. We're going to start doing running backs here soon. But our first player, and this is all at random, first player coming off the board here, we are going with Brendan Rice. And I'm throwing up here for confusion purposes. But let's talk about him. He looked good at the Senior Bowl. Very good at contested catches. Very good release package for his size. Breaks off routes pretty well. However, when compared to this wide receiver class and we think about Brendan Rice, this is a very deep wide receiver class. Where he goes in the draft is going to be very interesting. When I look at him as a prospect, when I look at the production, it's not top tier. It leaves you with questions. I think I'm going to put him back here in D, and I think D's not a bad spot because we're going to get other tiers in the future in the rankings as we get more wide receivers. He might go down, he might go up, but I think when we look at the full spectrum of wide receivers, when I look at the guys here on the board, I think I'm going to have them down here right now, considering what else we have on the board here on the top end, and considering those wide receivers have vastly more upside. But we got to move forward. Our next wide receiver that we're going to be looking at here, Odunze. And is he going to stay in the stud tier this week? I like Odunze. I like him a lot. The thing is, everybody likes him, so I don't talk about him as much because I let the market do the talking for me and I talk about everybody else. Big Odunze fan here. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think where he's going in the first round could lend to him being paired in a good situation. I think there's a chance that he could be the most productive wide receiver in this year's draft class. I think we're looking at a wide receiver here that is going to be a very polarizing figure in Dynasty over the next few years. Upside, downside, every side, sideways, whatever you want to talk about. But how I got the rankings, and I'm keeping it the same. If you've been following along, you know what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to put him in A tier. And I think this just needs to be his own tier. I think this just needs to be his own tier. If I put him in last year's class, he would be with that group in that top tier with the JSNs, Jordan Addisons, and them. And we said last year that that wasn't an S tier group, but we had to make it an S tier compared to the class. That class, the top guys are an A tier. So that being said, I feel good with having them here. And you know what's going to happen with S tier. You have a good idea. That being said, Malik Nabers, we got to talk about him. He's got a lot of upside. We're going to get the draft capital. It's going to be there. Compare him with Marvin Harrison Jr. Who's the better prospect? Who do you want? Marvin Harrison Jr. is considered the generational prospect of this class, considered the can't-miss guy. We're throwing him in there. Might as well just throw up the party there. These two guys are neck and neck for me, and really depends on how I wake up that day, who I want more. I like Malik Nabers. I think from a prospect profile, when you look at the numbers here, jumps out more in breakout age, more dynamic when it comes to the top end of his market share production. Younger prospect, has a lot of upside, has a lot of juice, played against SEC competition, balled out. When you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., everyone's going to talk about the bloodline. Productive at year 2 at Ohio State at 20 years old. Broke out with a good market share. put the stamp on things this year with Kyle McCord at quarterback. If he had Jaden Daniels at quarterback, what would his numbers look like? What would he be doing if he didn't have McCord and a better quarterback? No one says that. McCord's awful. He had to go in the transfer portal and transfer twice technically because he was going to go to Nebraska and then saw a 5-star quarterback get picked up, Dylan Raiola, and was like, can't compete against that. I guess I got to go to Syracuse. Marvin Harrison Jr., very good route runner. Malik Nabers, very good route runner. These guys are tremendous prospects. I have them rated as both generational, top-tier prospects, top-shelf guys. I like them both. They're in a tier together. If you're in a tier, you're ranked pretty much the same. Next, Lad McConkey. And that name does not work in that tier, and I'll tell you why. Because we're still waiting for him to break out at the college level, but he broke out at the Senior Bowl. We know he can break off routes. We've had a lot of wide receivers come to us over the course of time, do well at the Senior Bowl, do well during the draft season, break off routes good, not have good college production, and there's a reason why that's a marker, and that sets the odds for wide receiver. However, we are going to notice and notify that this guy's going to get draft capital, probably second round or so, might land in a good situation, could land in a situation where he gets peppered for targets. Where do you think he really should be? Should he be in B tier? Should he be in C tier? I have him more like a C tier guy. I don't want to go too low, but I think it's too outrageous to go too high. Compared to some of the other guys we're going to have in B tier, I don't know if I should put him up there due to upside concerns. Also, the odds are stacked against him from an analytical perspective here with the data. The film says a little different, but I can make that case with a lot of other wide receivers who did not break out at the college level, who looked good on film, that didn't hit at the NFL level. So staying down the line, staying down the middle here at C tier, I think that's fair. Georgia fans hate it. Data freaks are like, just pump him down to D. Just do that. Tape guys said, hey, he's a B tier guy. I'm putting him there. I think that's a safe bet. But we got to move on. And one of my favorite wide receivers is looking at us in the face here. His name is Troy Franklin. And I've been talking about him a lot. And I just did a video on him yesterday. I went back through the tape. And I go through the tape on these players a lot. I want to say off and on. But there's really no off. It's really just me jumping the guys, going back and forth, multiple guys a day. And just keep hammering the process. Keep talking ball. When I look at Troy Franklin, very smart route runner. Can find blind spots in the coverage, create separation, but he's very good at getting downfield, getting behind the defense because his release package. So quick, so fluid, very dynamic, a very fun wide receiver. I think we got upside here. I think the market with the draft community does not know what to do with him right now. He's thin-framed. He's not super strong at the catch point, and he does not have those highlight reel grabs. But when I watch him on tape, I see a lot of good things. If he's paired with the right quarterback who throws yellow balls, I think the upside is just going to be immensely high. But where should he be ranked? I think if you go too high, you might push him up too high where he's up with these profiles that are almost can't miss. They could, but they're almost can't miss. But you don't want to go too low because you see the upside and you want to tap into that a little bit. I'm going to put him at B. That's where we're going to have him at. But I'm moving on. And I'm moving on to the next guy, Keon Coleman. And he does not belong in that tier. And it looks horrible. It makes you want to throw up. However, we're talking about Keon Coleman here. He's a guy that needs to land in the right situation. So that being said, when I look at a wide receiver that needs to land in the right situation, that when we look at on tape, we see that he can't separate. Well, he can separate. He's just not very consistent at it. He's more not separating than he is separating, but he has tremendous ball skills. But if he goes to the right quarterback, goes with a higher volume passing attack, with a quarterback that throws it in there, who's not scared, but is also accurate, throwing it into tight windows, you're going to bump him up. That being said, you see where there's a pathway where he can jump in value and jump in production. So you don't want to send him to hell right now until the NFL tells us that we need to do so. Last week I had him in B tier. I've been thinking about that. But think about the words that just came out of my mouth there. Think about those words, and then think about the other wide receivers I was talking about there. And I was talking about him kind of in the same token as McConkey, where we see him do good things on tape. When we look at the market share production, he broke out at Michigan State and then almost broke out, very close to doing it at Florida State. Came on strong at the start of the season at Florida State, making highlight reel catches against LSU. Very dynamic wide receiver if the ball's humming his way because he's good at the catch points. We do have some red flags. Different red flags compared to McConkey, but kind of when you put all that together, not a comparison, but the comparison of like the amount of red flags and that he needs to be in the right situation, you're kind of oscillating him in C tier now. Like, that just seems fair. That just seems fair to me right now. Like, if he jumps in the first round, I can do this. If he goes to the second or third round and it's not a great landing spot, you can do that. So C just seems right. And you can make that same case with McConkey. Definitely can. But we got to move on. And this guy's going to crush the NFL Combine, Roman Wilson. He crushed the Senior Bowl already. He's in a lot of people's hearts. But we got to see the draft capital. We got to see where he lands in the NFL draft. Was not very productive at the college level. That was at Michigan. That was with Harbaugh. We can make that case with Nico Collins right now. I've already done that. We can see him break off routes. But honestly, when you compare what he did at the Senior Bowl, that's not at the Tank Dell level. Tank Dell outproduced him massively at the G5 level compared to Power 5. Different offense, but still so productive, so different, more explosive, very fluid, more dynamic route runner than he is. And he really blew the doors off things at the Senior Bowl. Roman Wilson was better than the other wide receivers, but there's levels to this game, but there's a lot of upside. You do not want to ignore the upside. But I am kind of high on him, but a lot of people are kind of too high on him because they either went to the Senior Bowl or it's just fresh in their head. That being said, also situational, because it's a deep wide receiver class. You're going to get a lot of talent getting dispersed everywhere. But when I think about him, a little bit more productive than McConkey. He's faster. He's just as fluid. Can create separation on the same token. I like him. And then him and Keon Coleman, that just doesn't seem right, considering what we're seeing at the start of the season. But again, if he goes in the first round, last pick to the Chiefs, he's bumping up here. Some people would bump him up here. I think that'd be too much. I think here. And then if he goes in the second round and you're like, head scratcher, early third round, you're like, you might go here. D might be totally different by then in my tiers. Anyways, I'm going to have more tiers because things are going at random and we're adding guys because we got to make content and it can't be just straightforward. Here's the ranks because I can't do that every week. But now we're adding our 3 new guys. And what I did to get our 3 new guys here for the rankings, I went to Twitter and I said, hey, give me some wide receivers. Give me 2 wide receivers you like. Let me know who you like. I got some wide receivers. I took the 3 that were mentioned the most. The first one, I did a video on him. I wasn't expecting to do this anyways. I was just doing things random, like you kind of guessed. But Xavier Worthy. Throwing him up at S tier right now to talk about him. But we got a lot of upside here. We have a guy here that's going to run the 4.3s. He's going to. If he runs a 4.41 or something, I'm actually going to be very surprised. He ran into 10.5s in the 100 meters. He showed that at Texas. He has a lot of burst. He can beat the defense. He also is very fluid breaking off routes. And he has an age 18 breakout age. Productive throughout his entire career at Texas. Wasn't uber productive, but he was productive. I'm going to put him at B tier. I think the analytics hit from ADOT to market share, yards per route run. I think they hit. I think they look good. I think the draft capital is going to be there. I think he's going to rise in value throughout the draft process. When we get to the combine, when people look at his numbers more, people look at the tape, I'm going to put him here at B. The difference between him and a guy like Roman Wilson, McConkey, Keon Coleman, he can create separation as good as these guys. You may say they're more technical in the route running, but he's also got more speed. Him and Roman Wilson, kind of similar. But guess what? He was more productive. He showed to be more productive at age 18 compared to any of these guys. That's one thing you want to know. And he held it throughout his career. Wasn't uber productive, but it was there. That's something to note. And he's flashing on tape. He's checking all the boxes. Should be in B tier over those guys. But we got to move on. We got to look at our next guy, Malachi Corley. Now think about that. Tell me how gross that feels. Now, when someone talks about him over the moon, think about how gross that looks like him sitting next to Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr. We're looking at a jacked up slot receiver, thick. He has that my dog mentality, and he is dangerous after the catch in a way where he'll run through your face. That being said, I've said it with a few wide receiver prospects here, but right situation, we got a nasty wide receiver here that could climb the ranks. A lot of people are comparing him to Deebo Samuel. I think that's the tipping point of his upside. I look at him as a slot receiver that's going to get mixed in. He has some upside to contribute in fantasy if the ball's flowing correctly his way. I do not need him to go to a team where he's the wide receiver 1. I don't look for NFL teams to think that. I look for him to go to a team where he can be the wide receiver 2 or a guy in the slot seeing opportunities, getting targets, and he ramps up from there. That being said, I think he's good to go in Tier C. And the thing about him, he's a G5 prospect. G5 prospects sometimes either don't hit or they take some extra time to season and develop. And you want to see that through. You want to see what the NFL thinks. I think he'll jack up during the combine, get noticed some more like he did at Senior Bowl. I like him a lot. I'm intrigued by him. I think Tier B needs to hold that value, that integration where there's some good guys there. Tier A is Odunze. He's going to stay there. But we're moving on to our next guy. He's at the Senior Bowl. He was off and then he was on. Xavier Legette. And the thing about this guy is the size adjusted athleticism is immense here. He can show he can be technical in 1v1s at the Senior Bowl. We showed that here on tape. Also, he can show that he can be a little bit raw. And we got to see where he goes in the draft. Could be round 2, could be round 3. We saw him go round 3 in a mock, but that was a mock draft. Mock drafts don't really count except for fun when you're looking at landing spots for Dynasty. But the upside's there. I've seen some people compare him to DK Metcalf when it comes to size adjusted athleticism. Close the window on that. He's not comparable to DK Metcalf. We do have some upside due to that, but he's got to develop. He's got to develop his game from there. But he's going to increase his value at the combine if he lives to that athleticism, if he lives to those traits. If he doesn't, we got to send him to hell in the rankings. We have to. The combine's going to be huge for this guy. Knowing who the combine's going to be huge for is huge for evaluating the combine. Xavier Legette, this is going to be a moneymaker for him when it comes to the draft. Look at him compared to these wide receivers. I'm worried about him, but I also see the upside. The thing is, he's got to go somewhere good. He's got to go somewhere good. And when we saw him go, I think, to the Bengals in round 3 in that mock draft, and we saw how the rest of that mock draft went, it wasn't like we went to the moon with that. Nobody's in the comments saying, ooh, look at that. We get some Bengals fans that come to these videos that look at these mock drafts and they get excited. No one did that. I have a feeling that situation may not pump him up in stock that high. It could. Maybe if he gets that draft capital, I'm not looking for him to get it unless he kills the combine. I'm going to put him up in Tier D. I think he's a little bit risky, but he's a guy that has some upside. You can make a case for Tier C, considering Corley's there, Keon's there. But again, the pathway for Roman Wilson seems a lot more true. The pathway for Lad McConkey seems a lot more true because he's going to get higher draft capital, create separation. Keon Coleman, draft capital, contested catch rates, could land in a good spot. Malachi Corley, size, slot receiver, G5 prospect that could make a case for Tier D, but a lot of good things going his way. We're putting him in Tier D right now for Legette until he starts proving himself some more. Again, these are rolling rankings. I'm not going to sit here and say this is it, this is in stone. I guarantee you Marvin Harrison Jr. won't be in Tier D Odunze won't be in tier D, but I can guarantee you everybody else is probably going to move around a good bit. I can guarantee you that. But that's what I have today. You're going to have to stay tuned to see what I got next week. I'm going to add 3 more random wide receivers. We're going to start doing the running backs soon. You need to click that subscribe button because I'm going to get you ready for your rookie drafts like nobody else will. Click that button. Stop missing out on one. Thank you for watching. Catch you in the next video.